Kyler Murray returns, James Conner returns, and the Cardinals return to the win column. Happy Victory Monday, everybody. Live here in the SeatGeek studios. It's Morning Scramble presented by Verizon. Zach Gershman joined alongside by Jody Jackson. And speaking of returns, Grailou, welcome back.
Only took me 8 weeks to come back. In fact, I think it was 9 weeks, week 1, but it is good to be back.
See, we made sure to go over it ahead of time. We're like, Craig, there's this thing called songbirds at the end. It's no longer an emotion. It's actually a song lyric. It's actually a song title. And for a game that had so many emotions, we got to start it off, Jody, with Kyler Murray making his return. What were your initial impressions of K1?
I mean, guys, I forgot how much fun it was to watch Kyler Murray play football, and it didn't take long because we all wondered, would this be the Kyler of old? And honestly, he was as fast as he was. I mean, we have the next-gen stats to prove it. 2021 going over 20 miles an hour on his big 3rd and 9 run. It was great to see him back, and I feel like he's a different guy now. Not so much the player, but the person and the way that he's handling everything. And I love to see that. I think he did well in this. We're going to break it all down a little bit more, but yeah, I think he did just fine in the new offense. We did see him under center a little bit, and I think that's going to be a progression, Craig, as well. But, you know, the other thing is Drew Petzing, I thought about him just calling plays and how much he probably enjoyed coming up with a game plan that include Kyler Murray and James Conner. And, you know, using a lot of the weapons yesterday.
Had Michael Wilson back on the football field as well, and it certainly makes an offensive coordinator's job a whole lot more easier when you have star players on that football field. And I do think it was fun to see, and just the expectations with Kyler coming into this game. I really didn't have many expectations, but what we did see was that Kyler Murray of old. The training wheels came off. There were no hindrance at all. He came out, he was running, he was throwing. He looked like K1 before the injury.
Jonathan Gannon said that Kyler Murray laughed in his face when he said that it might not look like Kyler Murray. What do you think is the message, Craig, that Kyler Murray sent to the NFL in this first game back?
That he's back, and he never really left except for the 11 months that he needed to get back on the football field. But that Kyler Murray that we saw that electrified fans and was a highlight every single night is back here in 2023. Now, it's one game. Try not to get too excited, but I do think there's a reason to feel excited because now we know what Kyler is capable of doing within this offense. Now you build upon it these next 7 games.
Jody, were you surprised to kind of not see any hesitancy from Kyler, knowing that even within the first few plays, he had to scramble out of the pocket to evade pressure?
I wasn't sure what to expect either, just as you guys mentioned. And so, you know, my expectations were a little bit tempered also because, you know, JG tempered them earlier in the week by saying it might not be the Kyler we're used to seeing. And then, as you mentioned, Zach, you know, Kyler laughed at him when he heard that because, you know, I guess he felt like he could go out there and do that on a football field. But we all know the speed of the game is so much different. You can't simulate it in practice. He didn't have any live reps in, you know, training camp is one thing. That's kind of what he had, but he didn't have a preseason, bodies flying at him. When you have the element of guys hitting you, guys chasing you at that speed, it is totally different. And to see him let loose, I didn't really need to see him go try to. I know on the pick he went over and threw his body in front of that. I don't know if I need to see K1 making tackles. But, yeah, he took on more contact in this game than I think I might have seen cumulatively over the last couple of years. And, you know, again, that's just another element of it. I think there's a toughness to him now going through the injury. And even though it's a different type of toughness when you come back from an injury, but just kind of an ability like, I'm going to go out here and leave it all out on the field. And I think that's a credit to everybody that has been involved in his comeback, the training. You know, we talked about everyone through that process and, of course, the coaches and getting him ready to play this game. But I didn't have an expectation. But, look, we know the arm. I mean, we know he can sling it. And so the explosive plays were back. I mean, there's so many things that are back kind of in the toolbox when you have a Kyler Murray out there. And that's no disrespect to Josh Dobbs. Clayton Tune, we all know, was, you know, coming in his first NFL game against the Cleveland Browns. And I'm sorry to even bring that up, guys. We flushed that. We put it in the back. And we have some good stuff to talk about with Clayton Tune today as well. But, yeah, Craig, I mean, I didn't know exactly what to expect. But to see him run like that and be as quick as ever was very impressive.
I think the word that you used, Zach, was that there was no hesitancy whatsoever. He didn't think about the knee. Maybe he did prior to going out on that football field for the first time, but it was Kyler Murray. And the mistakes that were made, very small, very minor, and easily correctable. The deep shot to Hollywood Brown, that's going to take time. More reps on the football field. The delay of game, okay. You're getting back in the flow of things. The false start penalty, again, very easily correctable moving on for the next couple of weeks.
Kyler Murray, 19 for 32, 249 yards in the Cardinals' 25-23 victory. Also, 6 rushes for 33 yards. The one rushing touchdown, I kind of felt that the rushing touchdown, in a sense, was a little bit poetic. Simply untouched, straight into the end zone. And I think, considering the fact that he said that he was kind of emotionless during the week, as the game went on, you started to see the emotion creep out a little bit. And I think that kind of fed into the entire team as a whole, because everybody was really rallying around him.
You saw when he crossed the goal line, he immediately went over the fans, a couple of high fives a little bit, and then mobbed by his teammates, because as excited as Kyler was for scoring, I think his teammates were just as excited to see number one back on the football field and have their franchise quarterback back.
Yeah, and he made it look easy, and that was a pretty simple play, kind of fake to Connor, and then he goes in and, you're just like thinking it was a bit poetic, just he's back. That looked like the Kyler Murray we had seen. There were times over the last few years where we talked about offense looking hard for some reason, but it was plays like that always looked simple for Kyler. And so to see that coming back was awesome. We know he would have had the passing touchdown. Michael Wilson was so close. The knee was down before he got in, and that ended up being a Clayton Tune, who is apparently going to be the new tush-push quarterback in there. So that's kind of a cool role for Clayton Tune if that's going to continue. But, Kyler, I think, showed us a lot. And it's funny, Zach, you mentioned those numbers. I don't even think that really tells the story, because I saw the rating or what. I mean, that's a case for me of the numbers really don't tell the story of what we saw out there.
What do you want from a franchise quarterback? Yes, you want the numbers, you want the passing yards, you want the rushing yards, you want that dual threat ability. But more importantly than all of that is a franchise quarterback has got to uplift your teammates and elevate everyone else's game. And we saw that. James Conner back on the football field, the emotional lift that he brought. But Trey McBride, you saw K1 trusting a second-year tight end. The offensive line, I think, played much better without a DJ Humphries and another starting left guard, that you saw what a franchise quarterback is capable of doing. And then defense feeds off of that, and special teams as well. There was complimentary football across the board.
And I think that Kyler Murray, when he spoke earlier on in the week, he said that you play harder for the people that you love. And I think that you could see the true camaraderie on the field amongst all the players on all 3 phases, because they were all kind of helping. They were all going into it, as you see the stats on your screen there. All around, the offense, the defense, the special teams, everyone came to play against the Atlanta Falcons in the 25-23 victory. Jody, you touched on Clayton Tune a little bit, how he went under center for that tush-push kind of quarterback sneak into the end zone. How much of a benefit is it to have a quarterback, when you have a quarterback? Kyler Murray's not the tallest. That's well known. He's one of the shortest ones in the NFL. But to have a bigger body like Clayton Tune to ultimately be able to push him into the end zone. Yeah,
I think that's a great element to this offense. And look, you do it any way that you can. I'm sure, I'm sure that Kyler would love to have the touchdowns. But again, and that goes back to, this is a team game. And that's one thing that this coaching staff said when they came in. And that kind of struck me yesterday, too, because I think that you saw not only Kyler, but everyone playing for each other. And it was going to be accountability, and it was going to be that everything was about team, not about one individual. And so I think that's a great role for him. He's got to feel good about it, too. But, yeah, I mean, whatever it takes to be able to get in the end zone. And, again, the tush-push, that's kind of like when you dissect that play, you can see Brock Purdy got hurt on that play. So you can also get injured on a play like that, even though you don't really have a guy coming at you with a lot of velocity, although sometimes the safeties can be coming up. But, I think that's a fun role for him, and I'm sure it felt good for him to get in the end zone.
And it's not just going to be when he comes in, talking about Clayton Tune, when he comes in, it's like, okay, he's going to run straight ahead. It's going to be that QB sneak, because on the 4th and 1, it was a pitch to James Conner in the first quarter. So now you have that defense thinking, okay, well, now here comes the backup quarterback. What's he going to do? You don't know what he's going to do, because he's capable of either sneaking it, pitching it, and we can drop back and throw it.
And personally, I was surprised because I did go into him. Once I saw Clayton Tune run out for that 4th and 1, I was like, okay, they're about to quarterback sneak in. Then you see the pitch to James Conner, who obviously got the first down there, and there were multiple moments in his game that he had 16 attempts for 73 yards, where he has been that continuous energizer bunny for the Arizona Cardinals offense. Craig, how much did James Conner add to the balance between the running game and the passing game?
We have seen, and it's been talked a lot about, as the offense, you were still getting rushing yards without James Conner on the football field, but it just looked very different. I don't think opposing defenses they weren't respecting the running game when number 6 was not on the football field. And having James Conner on the field, talk about that emotional list, he's a physical back, he invites contact, and you have to account for him, that play action. And that is something that when Conner was healthy, this team, this offense was number 1 in the league in play action, and it considerably dropped during those 4 games that he was out to where they were now middle of the pack, ranked 13th. You got to have that play action game, and it worked. And having Conner back, again, helps to have a franchise quarterback, but that running back situation for the Cardinals, I think within this offense, you need someone that defenses are going to respect and play up to the line of scrimmage. Maybe load the box a little bit and then open up for a Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, Michael Wilson.
Let's go back in time a little bit here. November 12th, 1989. Rob Outwalt has a 100-plus yard game, 105 yards against the Dallas Cowboys. November 12th, 2023, Trey McBride, the first tight end since then to go for 100 yards, 131, and he was stuck on 98 throughout the first drive in the 4th quarter until the last play, or one of the last plays, to get the Cardinals into the red zone and ultimately lead and set up the Cardinals for the Matt Prader game-winning field goal. What was working for Trey McBride to have this kind of career-high performance, Jody?
You know, he was unbelievable. He's just a kid that, again, showing us, we saw flashes. We saw some rookie mistakes, especially, blocking. And there were times that you could see some growing pains for him. And to see him come up with this kind of performance, it means a lot, obviously, for Kyler Murray, for his confidence. I think we saw it building with the game where he came up just shy of the 100-yard mark. Hey, Rob Awalt, we are not going to forget about you. But, 1989, people had talked about the fact that McBride, of course, wasn't even born. But that record had stood way too long, and so it's great to see that finally broken. A tight end for the Cardinals having over 100 yards, and for him to do it on that play, that final drive was amazing in a couple of ways. Of course, Kyler's ridiculous run where he ran 68 yards, really only needing the 13 yards. It was what it ended up with in the books. But then throwing that to McBride, who was able to, he took us through the play in the press conference post-game, and he said he had his eye on it the whole way. He adjusted. You could tell that it was desperation in that moment to make that play to set up the Prader field goal. And that's exactly what you need to see there. So, he did it in dramatic fashion, I guess you could say, Craig, breaking that record.
The pass was underthrown.
Yeah.
So all credit to McBride to come back to the football and adjust with the defender in his way, get not brought down. Maybe he was touched, maybe he wasn't, but he immediately got back up to try to get some extra yards. But that sequence earlier in the half where he had catches of 11, 10, and 15 to get to 98 yards, that same drive, Elijah Higgins was targeted, costly drop, but the tight end position as a whole, 13 targets. So the tight end can be the quarterback's best friend, and I think that's what you saw in game 1. And with that middle of the field wide open, because you have to respect the speed on the outside, it's like playing catch between the quarterback and pass catcher.
2 out of the Trey McBride's last 3 games, 95-plus yards against the Baltimore Ravens. He had that 95-yard total and just shy. And he was very critical of himself in that game. And I think he kind of took that, put a little chip on his shoulder as he went throughout the season and as it continues rolling on. And he said something interesting post-game. Well, he said he told Kyler Murray something he doesn't normally tell him, which is throw me the rock. Once the safety's guarding me, he said, I've been burning him all night. If it's man-to-man, give me the rock. And Trey McBride called this shot. And not only did he call a shot, he delivered in a big way that ultimately led to the Cardinals' 25-23 victory over the Atlanta Falcons. Craig, does Trey McBride have the ability to be one of the NFL's top tight ends? Because over the past couple games, he seems to be playing like it, especially for a second-year player.
Since Zach Ertz has been on IR these past 3 games, it has been Trey McBride as your number 1 tight end, and he has taken full advantage of the snaps. He has taken full advantage of the passes thrown his direction, and he does not go down on first contact. He is able to bulldoze a defender, finds his way into the middle of those zones. Again, that interception, I think you're going to see that worked out very quickly between quarterback and tight end. But right now in this second year, midway through year 2, I think we're seeing Trey McBride take that next step to become, I don't know if you want to put him in that category of a George Kittle yet within the AFC West, but someone who has that talent, that capability to be an elite tight end in the next several years.
One of the things Trey McBride and Kyler Murray did not connect on was there was one pass, Kyler Murray ended up throwing the interception. And he spoke a little bit about Kyler Murray took complete blame for it. He said that that's something we haven't worked on. To go back to K1 for a second, Jody, what does it say about his maturity as he's grown up in the NFL, now that he could stand at the podium and say, that was my bad, I messed up on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I loved hearing that from him again, and he kind of explained it, and that's, great. We're fine, love to hear that in the media. We want to hear how that stuff goes down. He said, he might have sat on that route, and then that would have been a completion, but they hadn't really worked on it. So for him to, again, in those moments, the great ones over the years, when you hear them talk, not just quarterbacks, but I mean players in general, is like not afraid to take that blame because, even if it wasn't completely your fault, because he said, and I think we can clearly see maybe Trey would have stopped there or not, but it never hurts to put yourself out there when there is some blame. And when you're the quarterback, that's what you have to do. And so I think that was something that we, I can't remember if we had heard something like that from him over the last few years. I think it just, again, speaks to accountability, and I think that's something that's going to serve him well.
Even better is you throw an interception, and what do? Instead of sitting there with either your head down or your hands to your side, Kyler Murray made the tackle.
Yeah. He threw his body out there.
So, and that speaks volumes as well, because you brought it up earlier,
I'm still
Jody.
iffy on that, Craig.
Well, hey, what does it take to get a win?
It does.
Kyler talked about it post-game. Whatever it takes, we needed to get a W. You put team ahead of you, and that's what Kyler did in that instance.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense before we get to our players of the game, because their performance should not go unspoken about. I mean, Kaiser White, 11 tackles. Budda Baker, 10 tackles. But the rookie, B.J. Ojulari, 8 tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, Jody, we talk week after week after week on Morning Scramble presented by Verizon about how this rookie class continues to be dominant. What has it been about B.J. Ojulari specifically that he's kind of been able to find his own footing in a sense and start to make these sort of numbers?
Well, you're right. You see the numbers there. He had a monster game, and you love to see yet another draft pick from Monty Ossenfort in this front office, making an impact. And I think it's just getting more comfortable, getting more opportunity. Clearly, you can see the talent. You can see that he's able to come with some speed and a burst off the edge there. And so it's going to be interesting to see for him. Some of these rookies, I think it is a little bit of a process. We talk about rookies hitting a wall around Thanksgiving because their season in college is usually over. But in some ways, and we saw this under Bruce Arians too, a lot of times they push through that, and we saw the best out of these guys in late November and December, and so hopefully that's going to be the case. But yeah, Ojulari, fantastic game. The defense as a whole, again, I mean, Bijan Robinson was terrific. We saw the talent there. I mean, and Heineke's kind of a gritty guy, a scrappy guy, and he left this game with a hamstring injury. Ritter came in. But you saw the Atlanta offense do some things, but again, the defense came up big in some big spots, Craig, and I think that's what they continue to do. They continue to just go out there and do their job, and kind of a lot, in key moments, it's a bend but don't break situation.
Get enough stops to allow the offense more opportunities to get back into the ball game, and in the case of Sunday, not only get back into the ball game, but win the ball game. Falcons had 0 first downs in that third quarter. Some other defensive numbers. This was the second best defensive effort since week 1 as far as total yards allowed. This was their best passing defense as far as net passing yards allowed. Didn't allow a play longer than 18 yards. And with Ojulari, I think what you're seeing is we always heard that plan for Kyler Murray. There's a plan to get him back on the football field. Ojulari didn't have an offseason. He was dealing with a knee issue for much of the offseason and training camp. But now for the first time since week 3, an edge rusher not named Zaven Collins had the most snaps among outside linebackers, 37. tied with Zaven Collins. There was a plan to get Ojulari up to speed, and I now think you're going to see him a heck of a lot more on the football field.
And in a lot of cases, this coaching staff is going to tell you they're not surprised in one bit. They knew the type of potential that B.J. Ojulari brought to the table. And as we've seen week after week, he's starting to continue to progress. When I spoke to Paris Johnson Jr. following his first career sack, B.J. Ojulari that is, and I asked him about his rookie teammate, he said, I just know that this is just the start for B.J. because it's going to continue getting better and better. He's going to continue coming to practice harder and harder, and he's clearly has done that. But let's pull out the whiteboards a little bit because I think B.J. could have been one of those players for player of the game. But let's get through our player of the games, shall we?
Okay. I think a couple of them are pretty clear, right?
Yeah. See, this is one of those games where like anybody could really be a player of the game. Like it was that dominant of a performance.
It was a good team win. And I think, the only, I hate to be the negative one here, but yeah, the penalties are probably the worst thing about this game. Mm-hmm. But you can't look at any one player and say, I love that stat. You mentioned, Craig, about the 18, or Zach, you mentioned 18 yards being the longest play. That tells you a lot about the ability both up front on defense and on the back end. They didn't give up any big plays. But should I go first? Since I feel like this is the low-hanging fruit on the Kyler Murray is my player of the game, maybe because I responded first in our production text chain, which I never do, so I just took it. I took it and ran with it here. Kyler Murray, we went over a lot of the things that made yesterday special for him, and I think one thing that was clear after the game, just the way that the players mentioned, you heard a lot of players talk about it was so much fun playing with K1 again. And, the numbers were solid. They would have been even better if maybe there wasn't maybe a little, I don't even know if I call it rust. That play to Hollywood Brown was on his fingertips, if he maybe a little bit too much on that one. But he was very close to having a game, maybe even over 300 yards passing, having the passing touchdown. The numbers don't mean anything to me. What we saw out there was a healthy Kyler Murray in a good place, mentally and physically. That's something that we really haven't seen in, I feel like, quite a while. And I think this is just the beginning for him. And we saw him incorporating all the weapons on this offense. I think we're going to see more of that going forward. But guys, there's no surprise to me. He kind of laughed at JG when he said, are we going to, when he told us, the media, are we going to see the Kyler that we know right out of the gate? And, at times, it looked like he was just showing off. But that's just him. That's just Kyler Murray.
I like what he said post-game, that the win was icing on the cake, because to a certain extent, the result didn't really matter. Now, at the end of the day, yes, you want to get that win. But to your point, Jody, what did Kyler Murray look like? Is he healthy? Is he comfortable? Is he confident? And you can check all those boxes off to now where you go, okay, this was step one. You got 7 more steps left to go.
Craig, take it away.
So if Kyler Murray was low-hanging fruit, I'm going to go with the other low-hanging fruit here, and that would be tight end Trey McBride, who had 131 receiving yards, as we talked about already. 34 years to the day. First Cardinals tight end with over 100 receiving yards. And it was just good to see, because 2 weeks ago he had 95 receiving yards, falling just short of that century mark. But Trey McBride, I do think, is going to be someone now that's going to elevate his game, or have his game elevated because of the quarterback play. And now all of a sudden you start looking for pieces, players that you can circle and say, all right, that's who's going to be on this team next season and beyond. And it's games like that. He doesn't need 100 every single week, but someone that can affect a defense to where the defense has to pay attention to him.
Definitely. Both of those, especially if their chemistry continues to grow, it's going to produce hopefully more wins, start stringing more wins together. If those were the low-hanging fruit, I think this is the wild card. I went with the kicker, Matt Prader. Got to give automatic Matt Prader some love, because he was incredible. 4 field goals, including the game-winning field goal as time was expiring. Craig, he is 17 for 17 on game-winning field goals. He tied and then took over the franchise record for 50-yard plus field goals in this one game. It's incredible. 17 years in the league. Matt Prader continues to establish himself and solidify himself as one of the NFL's best kickers. And as you can see, the stat line right there, 56 yards was the career long. And honestly, to see him get lifted off the ground at the end of the game by his teammates was quite a thrilling one to see.
Look, a 23-yard field goal is a chip shot, but sometimes those are the most difficult to make. But even more impressive than the 17 field goals of 50 or more yards this season. It's what Prader has done in his career. 76 career makes of 50 or more, the most in league history. The next closest is 58. So that just shows you not only the consistency of a Matt Prader, but the confidence that coaches have in sending out Prader to kick a long field goal.
Jody, this was the turning point that sent the Falcons home with the loss, but what was the turning point of the game as a whole?
Well, I thought about this, and I thought, just to kind of be, flippant about it, but, just Kyler Murray taking the field to me was a turning point, because we kind of knew if this is the Kyler of old, you're going to have a chance. You're going to have a puncher's chance here against anyone. I know it was the Falcons. Falcons, though, a team that had a better record than the Cardinals coming in, had a lot more to play for. Called it their Super Bowl, apparently, going into their bye week. So, that's one thing. The 3rd and 9 is the other maybe obvious one. But again, I go back to the defense and that stop on 4th down. Ritter was in the game. Jonathan Ledbetter comes up with a stop there. And this defense continues to, you talk about having a chance. Sometimes you think, okay, this is going to be difficult. They're even in the red zone throughout the last couple of weeks. We've seen it with this team. They stop 1st down, 2nd down. Then you get to a 4th down stop, and they are able to make it happen. And so that really is a credit to this team fighting, this defense fighting. And so I love that as maybe one of the moments there, because, again, this was a battle. This was a game that was going back and forth. And for Kyler Murray to have to come up with the game-winning drive, I think, was a bit of a storybook ending. But there were a lot of moments leading up to that, including the 4th down stop.
I also want to shout out Antonio Hamilton, because you want to talk about plays that if it doesn't get made, then we're talking about something completely different here on Monday morning. But that is a costly pass interference penalty against Hamilton that got the Falcons into the go-ahead touchdown. But going for 2 to make it a 25 or 2-point or 25-22 ball game in favor of the Falcons. They threw at Hamilton again. Drake London makes the catch, but he doesn't get into the end zone. Hamilton able to have that short-term memory, get off the field with something positive, make it just a 1-point deficit, or I should say, 1-point deficit to allow a game-winning drive as opposed to potentially a game-tying drive and going into overtime.
The resiliency from Antonio Hamilton to fall back with that DPI and to come back and make that truly game-saving play definitely is an important one. So let's pull back these whiteboards out and let's take out the markers here, because it's time for Songbirds. And Craig, I warned you about it, so I'm telling you right now.
You don't know how long I stayed up last night to figure this thing out.
This is big redemption for you, Craig. But also, we're not going to have Danny here drawing, so we missed that. She'll be back next week
drawing. Don't you worry. I'm not even going to
Are you going to try to draw something?
Not in the slightest bit. If there's anything with drawing, I was given a Songbird suggestion from our team illustrator, Chad Burns, who said Out of Pocket was the song of his choice because of Kyler Murray's ability to get out of the pocket. Which, you know what?
There you go. Yeah.
Kudos to you, Chad.
It's okay if it's a cover song, right?
Sure.
Too late.
Craig, there's always
so much for my
with you, Craig.
Yeah.
I'm still writing over here, so somebody else can.
No, Craig's going to go first.
Right,
I made sure of this. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, 1989, the last time Cardinals tight end had a 100 receiving yard game. So I went back to 1980. I did my research, Zach.
I'm proud of you.
I went back to look for some of the top songs in 1989. And I came up with a cover song, but Tina Turner in 1989 released The Best. And that describes Trey McBride. He was the best on the football field on Sunday.
You're the best for finally putting together a song. I'm proud of you, Craig.
It only took me 9 weeks.
Kudos all around. We give a round of applause. Yes. Jody, take it away with your song choice.
Well, I was just trying to put together my emotions for Kyler Murray, what he's able to do. So this is a lot of words here. It's the title of the song is Mama Said Knock You Out, but don't call it a comeback. The first line from LL Cool J. I've been here for years, and yes, Kyler Murray, while he's still young and he hasn't been in the league that long, it is a bit of a comeback, though, isn't it? And it's a lot of fun to watch. So props to you, Kyler. We enjoyed watching you, and many more to come this year.
That's awesome. I went back kind of similar to a Kyler theme, but also for the Cardinals as a whole. I went Welcome Back because I think that this is a song where It's an exciting song. I used to hear it on all the different commercials before MLB season came back because they're saying welcome back to the MLB season. Well, welcome back to Kyler Murray, to James Conner, to Michael Wilson, to the Cardinals to the win column, to Craig Grailou on Morning Scramble. It's truly incredible how the hope for this team, it's truly there. It's all in the pudding. They have everything that they could do to put together a couple of wins and string together a couple of wins. So it's a really exciting time, and for Kyler, this has kind of been the message to him being welcome back.
I think it's interesting because if you're looking from a national perspective, yes, it's a 2-8 team, but is it really a 2-8 team now that you look at Kyler and James Conner back? I think no, right? And they were already close on a couple of those games you can look at, but it doesn't matter, I think, when you are looking from outside. When you're in this building, if you're a Cardinals fan who's been watching and following, you know that it's maybe not about what they can get to this season because there is a hole that you dig at 1-8, but it's about the future. And I think that's what we're so excited about, that you see that the team is in good hands with Kyler, the coaching staff, the front office. You trust what's going on here. And so, welcome back to hope also, to spring off of what you were saying.
The second season began on Sunday, and I know head coach Jonathan Gannon didn't like the word reset with the return of Kyler Murray, but to me, this was a reset. The season started anew on Sunday, and the Cardinals are 1-0 with Kyler Murray.
So I'll ask you guys quickly as we head to Houston for the next upcoming game before the latter half of the season really kicks off. What are the realistic expectations for the remainder of the season?
Again, it's not so much the end result. Yes, you want to see wins, but what you more importantly want to see is this team building pieces that you can advance into the future. How much more does this offense look better, more efficient, eliminate some of those penalties with Kyler Murray as your quarterback, and then figuring out those pieces that you can surround Kyler with. Because if Kyler does become your franchise quarterback, you make that decision, then that certainly opens up a whole different can for options for this front office to put pieces on offense and defense around K1.
Yeah, I mean, there's some tough games on the schedule here, and Houston is no slouch coming in. We all, of course, we know the situation with the pick and everything, but this team is doing well right now with C.J. Stroud, D'Amico Ryans, what they're doing, and so it's going to be a good challenge. I think, again, going back to the lack of explosive plays from the Falcons, we're going to see, that's kind of what Houston's been doing really well and piling up yardage, so I'm interested to see. But, again, every challenge is going to make this team better. We're going to learn more about them. We're going to learn more about this version of Kyler. This, again, I could say new version, but the good news is a lot of Kyler looked pretty much the same, guys. So that's a good thing. But I think mentally he's in a better spot right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, it's going to be a showdown in Texas featuring a Texas kid at quarterback being Kyler Murray. That'll do it here for Morning Scramble, presented by Verizon. From the SeatGeek studios, make sure to stay up to date with all content on azcardinals.com. So for Jody Jackson and Craig Grailou, I'm Zach Gershman. We'll see you next week for another edition of Morning Scramble.